This is to subpoena the immigration records of Ilhan Omar and her alleged brother, husband, and another husband whose names I cannot pronounce. Immigration fraud and denaturalization processes, potential criminal liability, things that we needed to address.
They're already dismissing it as a nothing burger. Just another committee spat. Just background noise from Capitol Hill. Funny how Washington always frames it that way right before the real arguments start. Right before everyone suddenly cares a lot about jurisdiction. But as the old political saying goes, when the truth walks into the room, the process immediately calls a lawyer. So do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with me until the end. Because moments like this aren't really defined by the accusation itself. They're defined by the reaction that follows. And today, something unusual happened. On the record. In plain language, a sitting member of Congress had their immigration records discussed as a possible target for subpoena. And the word naturalization didn't appear by accident. That single detail changed the tone of the conversation. What started as routine oversight suddenly began to look like the opening move in a much bigger legal confrontation, one that could spark a debate about what the Constitution actually requires for someone to hold federal office. So watch carefully, because the story isn't just about the claim being made. It's about how quickly the narrative moves from ordinary committee procedure to a potential legal fight with national implications. Let's walk through the receipts.
Chair recognizes Ms. Mace to speak on the Garcia amendment to her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I support Representative Garcia's amendment, and you beat me to it. I was going to do this on the House Armed Services Committee, and I'm a little jealous that you beat me to it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It is the best sunshine, and if there are individuals, I don't care about party, I don't care about affiliation, this needs to be we need to get to the bottom of it and what's going on. And quite frankly, I don't think someone that allegedly is doing arms deals should be sitting on the Foreign Affairs Committee or the House Armed Services Committee. And if this is what gets to the bottom of what's happening over there, then I support it and I support the amendment, and let's do it.
All right, but you yield back. You yield to me. So I've had several members request information about trying to determine if Ms. Omar was involved in any of the Somali fraud and this and that. The thing that I've told people is the Ethics Committee is set up to do that. That's what the Ethics Committee's sole purpose is to investigate members. So we've got a motion by Mr. Garcia to amend Ms. Mace's motion. Both the amendment and the motion seek this committee to investigate sitting members of Congress. That's not something the Oversight Committee does, but we're a Democratic committee, and I'm not telling anybody in here how to vote. You vote however you want. But that's what the Ethics Committee role is. That's their jurisdiction. And I just wanted to state that. And again, look, I'm for whatever. I'm for transparency. You all vote the way you want. This committee's wired. You're going to vote the way you want anyway. I don't think the ranking member can tell his members how to vote, and I can't tell my members how to vote. I'm just telling you that's what the Ethics Committee's sole purpose in life is. So,
Mr. Chairman,
just stating that.
on a point of order,
Mr. Chairman.
Which one do we want to, Mr. Lynch?
okay. Mr. Chairman, if I believe you're correct in your assessment that that is not something within our jurisdiction. That would mean that that motion would be out of order, not subject to a vote, and let's do this anyway, even though it's not within our jurisdiction.
We can do pretty much what we want in this committee, but I just want to make it very clear so we don't start going down this road, or this committee will just turn into, investigating other members, whoever's in control. That's what the Ethics Committee set up to do. I'm not. Look, Ms. Mace, you can file any motion
and it
you
was
want,
covered
and
up.
Mr. Garcia
We should find out.
if
Someone married their brother to commit immigration fraud. We should find out. That's what this committee can do.
I understand.
Let's not defame members of Congress. Mr. Chairman, I just want to add to you. I just want to agree, first of all. I think Oversight Democrats, we don't believe either of these motions should be discussed. This is not the place to be going after members in this way. If there's a concern about a member, it should be at the Ethics Committee. But if members on the majority are going to go after members in our caucus, we're going to do the same. And so if the Republican majority wants to remove this amendment or vote this amendment down completely, we would join you on that. But what we're not going to do is allow the attack on one of our members.
And I'm
Mr.
not
Chairman.
defending or opposing. I'm just saying that's what the ethics.
This is what we do up
Committee's
here.
supposed to
We
do.
just protect each other, protect our own, and nobody ever gets held accountable for anything up here. That's what this whole thing is BS.
It goes to the Ethics Committee.
Chair recognizes.
Which
Well,
then it dies
we're
in
going to
a black
vote on
hole.
this. Everybody's going to vote on this. We're going to vote on this because there's been a motion amendment. We're going to vote on the amendment.
This all begins around the 12-second mark when Nancy Mace quietly introduces her motion. No theatrics, no raised voices. I'm just a straightforward reference to House Rule 10, the Oversight Committee's authority, followed by a clear explanation of what she's requesting. Immigration records connected to Ilhan Omar, alleged family relationships, and questions surrounding potential immigration fraud, specifically to examine possible reforms related to denaturalization and gaps in existing statutes. Pay attention to what she doesn't do. She doesn't accuse anyone of guilt. She doesn't deliver a speech designed for headlines. She frames the entire request as oversight, and that's the moment the room tightens. Within seconds, the response shifts, not toward the substance of the request, but toward retaliation. Representative Garcia introduces an amendment calling for subpoenas targeting Republican Corey Mills. Suddenly, the discussion expands to include military service records, business dealings, Department of Justice communications, and even a past domestic incident, matters unrelated to the original motion, but strategically inserted into the debate. Garcia is candid about the reason. The amendment, he says, isn't really about Corey Mills. It's about sending a message. If you investigate one of ours, we'll investigate one of yours. That's not oversight. That's political deterrence. Next comes the emotional appeal. Garcia declares that Ilhan Omar is as American as any member of this body, describing her as both a fighter and a symbol of the American dream. But that's not a legal argument. It's narrative protection. Because if the records themselves were irrelevant, there would be no urgency to block the request. What happens next may be the most revealing part of the entire hearing. Suddenly, the Ethics Committee becomes everyone's preferred venue. Suddenly, jurisdiction becomes the central concern. Suddenly, members argue that this committee shouldn't examine fellow members of Congress at all. In plain terms, slow the process, move it somewhere quieter, and let the issue fade away. At one point, a member says something unusually direct. Up here, members tend to protect their own, and accountability rarely follows. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. It sounded more like an admission. Nancy Mace, for her part, doesn't retreat. She even supports the amendment, not because it helps her case, but because she argues that transparency should cut both ways. Her position is simple. If the records clear someone, I release them, and if laws exist, they apply to everyone, including lawmakers. That's when the tension rises, not because the vote itself is decisive, but because of the precedent being discussed. Denaturalization, normally a distant legal concept, has now entered the official record of a congressional hearing. Eventually, Garcia withdraws his amendment and moves to table the entire motion. No extended debate. A quick vote. Motion tabled. For the moment, the issue is shelved. But several things weren't tabled. The fact that immigration fraud and denaturalization were openly debated, the speed with which party lines hardened, and the quiet acknowledgement that oversight committees can look at these questions, even if they rarely choose to. So this wasn't the end of the story. It was more like an opening signal, because once subpoenas enter the conversation, the timeline starts moving, even when leadership tries to slow it down. If you want to see what the next move might be before the news cycle moves on, stay tuned. This conversation isn't finished yet.